and we know that if I'm in this office and I run out the door in a panic, I go this way out into the egress path, I will eventually get to this stairwell and be able to go down that stair and then eventually get outside of the building and eventually out into the street and away from the building. The egress path is all the way, like once I'm getting out of this office, as soon as I get into that corridor, that's my egress path. I'm then in the stairwell, that's part of my egress path. I then get out of the building, I have to be able to get away from the building, and that's all still part of my egress path, right? So understanding all of those components, and that each of those components is going to have separate fire rating aspects. So this wall is going to be one part of that egress path, and it's going to have one set of expectations in terms of fire rating. The stairwell is a different part of the egress path, and it's going to have its own set of expectations in terms of fire ratings. So why would that be? Why would they be different? Why wouldn't you just say it's a 1 hour egress path and everything's 1 hour? Because the idea here is that different points provide different levels of safety. The first thing you're doing is you're getting out of where the fire might be, which is this office, or maybe the fire is actually over here, but you're getting out of the office and you're now in the corridor. And this rated wall is trying to help us stop that fire from breaking through that wall. So we're using it as a way to contain the fire. Why fire? Because fire is the thing we're most worried about in these situations, because that's the thing that can really cause damage and hurt people, both from the smoke and from the danger of the fire itself and the potential for collapse and all those kinds of issues. So I have this fire rated wall here, but that's not the only thing, right? That as we get out into that corridor, we also can then get into the stairwell. Well, we want to make sure that the stairwell is considered a sort of safe place. So it might be the same fire rating, depends. It might, maybe it's a short building and it's a particularly not worrisome situation. So maybe it's only 1 hour for both of them. Or maybe this is a 2 hour wall now, right? Because they're creating a safer place in the stairwell. And part of the thinking on that is I may not even have to exit the building, I just have to get into the now safer zone, right? And that's going to protect me for a little bit longer, and it's going to protect the sort of overall, the safety of the people. Now, having everybody run down a set of stairs and out the building isn't always the best thing to do. It can actually be fairly dangerous just from the people sort of stumbling into each other. So often the idea is that you just have them go to the stairwells and find some safety there. And then if there's still a problem and we really do need to clear the building out, then there's some sort of alarm system, intercom system that says, all right, time to go, get out of the building, this is important. So then you'd follow through with the rest of that egress path. So the path has multiple parts to it, and it gets safer and safer and safer as you go along. When I finally get outside of the building, there's a distance that I have to be able to get away from the building. It's a little bit different in different situations, but usually it's in the sort of 20 feet, 30 feet kind of range. That if you have a situation where you get out of the building and there's a fence right there and I have to have a key to get through it or something, and I'm stuck in a space that's maybe 5 feet wide, well, that's not very safe. If that building's on fire, you want to be able to get away from that building. So that's why the egress path goes away from the building, and you have to be able to continue to get out without a key all the way through all of that. So this is also why the door swings into the stairwell will be done in such a way that it flows with the path of the egress. It's why all the doors will be keyless in the direction of egress for that egress path. So what we're saying here is there's a whole set of numbers and issues, the 1 hour wall, the 2 hour walls for the stair, the length of that egress path until you're far away from the building. All of those things are going to come from this understanding of the occupancy in relationship to the construction type. How big is the floor plate here? Well, that's going to come from this relationship of the occupancy to the construction type. We're going to understand it because it's going to say how big a area per floor we're able to put in because of the nature of this particular construction type related to that occupancy. It's going to have similar issues with the materials and the systems. Depending on the occupancy, specific systems are going to be required. We're going to have different systems, different HVAC type systems, different exhaust systems for multifamily than we would for an office, because they're used differently and there's different sort of expectations. A single family house would be different than a multifamily, those kinds of things. So we're following through with how these things work through this understanding of the code review that we're basing off of the original occupancy and construction type assumptions. There's also a number of specialty elements that are going to come into play. These are going to depend for very specific types of uses. There will be special codes that would be dependent on those uses. So for example, outdoor sports facilities will have a set of special codes because there's sort of unusual things about that kind of space. Special kinds of intense scientific structures would have special codes for them. So you have to also be aware of all these sort of specialties. And then it's just the idea of the expectations. There's certain ways that people expect things to work, and that's why we generally design towards those expectations, because they're then a little bit safer. People understand how it works, so they know how to exit a building.